It is hour number 2 of the Frank Beckmann Show. Yeah, we should have known that kind of feeling that was coming out of Candace Miller's office, the congresswoman from Macomb and St. Clair County. It's whenever you start talking about, don't mess with Selfridge. That's the message that comes out of her office all the time, and the president's messing with it again with his budget proposal, where he wants to, again, he's proposing that we cut out those warthogs, the A-10s, our close support for our troops with the air combat that we, with the air missions that we provide for their ground combat. And Congresswoman Miller's on the other end of our line to talk about it. Them are fighting words, aren't they?
Those are fighting words, Frank. They really are. In fact, as you might imagine, last night, when I finally got out of Detroit Metro with all the snow and got here to D.C., I was working that floor pretty hard last night in the House here, talking to the chairperson of the House Armed Services Committee and others that will have things, a lot to do with what happens with our budgets as they go forward. Obviously, they see me coming. They know what the first thing out of my mouth is going to be. How we've got to push back about this idea again that the president has to actually retire the entire A-10 fleet. And we were sort of laughing, I guess, although it's not funny, but it was like Groundhog Day again here, right? Here's the same kind of budget proposal again from the president. Never balances, ever. And as we say, retiring the entire A-10 fleet. He's trying to cut funding for the Great Lakes. He doesn't even really address the massive long-term debt that our country has. Obviously increasing spending, $74 billion this time. Nothing really in there about simplifying our tax code. So, the president's priorities are his priorities. I do not believe they are the correct priorities. I think they're the wrong priorities, certainly for the American people, and I think my district and the state of Michigan and the nation, quite frankly.
Groundhog, warthog, it's all the same,
Yeah.
but this hits so many people. This budget, if it were to be adopted by Congress, he really hits at people. Think about this. He wants to eliminate the year-end tax-exempt financing of professional sports stadiums. Mike Ilitch wants to build a $500 million arena in downtown Detroit. It could have an impact on that. Here's another move. This could impact major college athletics across the board. They want to end the 80% tax credit on the seat licensing fee that fans have to pay to buy some seats. Part of the reason people will pay that extra fee that helps fund college athletics in our country is because they get a tax break on the donation that they make to the college through the seat license fees. He wants to cut those out. Some of this is just an absolute, it seems like punishment more than anything else.
Somebody referred to it as the politics of envy, and yet I don't even know if that's a good description because, you're just talking about college athletics, but just remember, up until just a couple of days ago, he was trying to penalize and tax people that were doing 529s for college savings accounts. So, and by the way, then we were going to have 2 free years of community college. So here we looked at that, and I think everybody said, okay, so if you do the right thing and plan and save, you will be taxed and penalized. But if you just wait, you can have it for free from the government. I mean, this is the way the guy thinks. It goes on and on. Frank, I can't believe you didn't pick up your favorite here, which is he providing over $1 billion for climate change. Well, I know you're all about that.
Yes, well, I mentioned earlier that Gina McCarthy, the EPA director, was at the Winter X Games in Aspen, Colorado, and was warning that Aspen by 2100 is going to be Amarillo, Texas, because the snow is disappearing from Aspen Mountain, except for one thing. It's not. Their coverage right now is 165% of the average. And she totally ignores every bit of fact and just makes the statement, and it's accepted as true. And the same thing's happening with the president. He wants to spend all this money on climate change. Let me see you change the climate, okay? Just what is the perfect climate? Because Aspen, Colorado, at one point in this Earth's history was on the equator. That's the way the Earth rotated at one time. It was underwater.
Okay, Frank, I think I pressed the right button there with the climate change.
You betcha. Do you remember? Well, you don't remember, neither do I, but at one point, some 10,000 years ago, our great state of Michigan was nothing but a glacier. And it melted. Imagine that. Well, long before we even thought about an SUV. So, yeah, you touched the
well,
right
anyway,
button.
he
Doug,
just
got
goes
it?
on in so many different areas here. You know, another thing, this is really, this one here, I think, because we have really tried to, the Republicans have really tried to push back on this whole idea of the death tax. You know, bad enough you have to die, and then the government's taxing you like crazy. In his budget proposal, he not only raises taxes on the death tax, but he's actually death will now actually be taxed twice. So, you know, my district, for instance, that goes up to the tip of the thumb, we have all kinds of family farms in there. It's sort of our identity in Michigan, quite frankly. And if this double death tax it goes into effect, that really could be the end of the family farm. You know, small businesses maybe can't survive another generation, more than one generation, and again, all because of this politics of envy and, you know, more and more government spending. Here's another one. As you know, I'm the vice chair of the Homeland Security Committee. We were just talking about my recent trip down to the southern border, where we were looking and talking to the border agents down there about all these UACs that came through, the unaccompanied children, which was a humanitarian crisis at our border. Now, that has slowed down a bit, but it hasn't stopped. And they're saying that this summer it could be the same as it was last year. What is the president proposing? He wants to give $1 billion to the Central American countries that are sending these UACs up to us. Give them more money. They're already getting foreign aid, remember. Now we're going to give them another $1 billion to help them with whatever. Frank, what we need to do is not be giving them more foreign aid. We need to start cutting the foreign aid. That's how you're going to get their attention. And by the way, I also think the president would be wise to at least mention that we should revisit the whole concept of CAFTA, the Central American Free Trade Agreement. Why are we having this wonderful free trade agreement with people who are not great neighbors if they keep letting all of their children coming through our borders and other kinds of things that are coming through across our borders, which causes us all kinds of problems as well as money that we have to pay, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, again, I think that the president's priorities here are just going in the opposite direction of what I think, and I don't see this as a partisan agenda, I really don't. I think it's the American agenda. And, you know, we need to be sticking up for America here.
Well, if you had a young child that age and you just dropped them on the street to let them go wherever, you'd be arrested for child abuse. You'd be in jail. But we want to reward the people from other countries to do it. Stay where you are. I got a couple more questions for Congresswoman Candace Miller. Right now I want to check traffic because we reached the 5s, and here's Mark Mitchell. Congresswoman Candace Miller with us. She's already begun lobbying to save the Warthog, the A-10 fighter jet that is supported out at Selfridge Air National Guard Base. There's also this issue, Congresswoman Miller, about the $250 million that we need for the Detroit Customs Plaza to be built for the new international trade crossing, a $2.1 billion project that Canada is financing itself. They're paying for the bridge. All we got to do is build the customs plazas. And while the president has devoted money to customs plazas in New York, while he's pouring money into all sorts of other projects, God bless Michigan State University for their rare isotope beam project. They got $730 million to begin construction last year, or $730 million is the total price of the project. $100 million is in this budget, $69 million to fix up the courthouse in downtown Detroit, but we can't find money to give the bridge a chance to be built. Now, as I said, great that we want to do all this science work, but this is a limited application compared to the economic benefits that a new bridge would provide us.
Frank, the first thing I need to tell you is I represent the city of Port Huron, where the Blue Water Bridge
They
exists.
got the same issue, don't they?
They have the same issue, and in my opinion, they should have a priority over the NHTSA, and I will just put that out there. I've said it very openly. NHTSA has 1,000 advocates. The Blue Water only has me. And by the way, our bridge is the second busiest border crossing on the northern tier of the nation. And you know what? It is not an artist rendering. It lives, it breathes, and every single day at the foot of the Blue Water Bridge is the genesis for I-69 and I-94. Major trade arteries, obviously, throughout our nation. And we were promised a border plaza there, crossing plaza, 12 or 13 years ago. There's about 60 acres of condemned property all vacant land. Think if you're the mayor of Port Huron looking out. You're looking at this huge swath of vacant property where businesses were demolished, homes were demolished, we're waiting for a plaza and nothing. Now, and don't get me going on this. Whatever happens on the Nitsy, God love them. I know we need another border crossing. But here's this, only 35 miles up the road, we have the same situation. So again, this is an issue that certainly the president should be looking at. These border crossings are major, major economic drivers, trade corridors. Canada, our best friend, our ally, our neighbors, Michigan is Canada's biggest trading partner. And if you think of all these different, we were just talking about trade agreements, our best trading partner is Canada in the United States. So we need to be doing everything we can to expedite commerce and activity between our two nations.
So what are Republicans prepared to do about all this?
All what?
All these issues we've been talking about.
All the whole budget?
Yeah.
Oh, let me just tell you, the budget, first of all, the president's budget is really DOA. Okay? It's dead on arrival. And if you think, we are here trying to be fiscally conservative. The president says that everything is pretty good now, so we can just go ahead and start spending until, whenever. But if you think really in the last several years here, Frank, our annual deficits have actually been reduced, actually by about 2/3. We don't talk about it that much, but it should be noted because that is entirely, in my opinion, because the Republican majority in the House has been the finger in the dike here. And now we control both chambers, and we need to attack the national debt, $18 trillion. And he wants to actually increase it by another $8 trillion over the next 10 years. Frank, we're about to have another debt ceiling vote sometime this year. We're going to be up against it. And these are the kinds of issues that we need to work with the president. I hope the president sees the kind of reaction that we have all had here and can understand that we're not in favor of what he's talking about, additional government spending. And we don't have those kinds of resources right now. And by the way, if we don't get a handle on this long-term national debt, as we've talked about so much, all we're doing is passing that on to the next generation. Because what? We don't have the political will to take care of it, so you're just passing it on to these children? That is wrong. It's un-American. No other generation of Americans has ever done to our children and grandchildren what we are doing to them, ever.
All right, final question. It's on politics. The latest poll showing Scott Walker's got great support for president, yes, especially now that Mitt Romney has decided he's not going to run. Who do you like right now in the early going? Walker? You like Jeb Bush, Rand Paul? Who do you like?
I like a governor. That's who I like. Actually, we're bringing Chris Christie into Macomb County in March. I think I want to let our folks there get a look at him. I also like Scott Walker. I like these governors. I tell you, the thing with a governor, I say this because I think Rick Snyder could go down certainly as one of the best governors our state has ever had. And these are governors that have to do things. They have to balance a budget. They could never submit a proposal like President Obama that never, ever balances. They have to balance budgets. They have to get things done. And I think our country has had some experience with, the truth is when you're in the House or the Senate, and obviously I'm here, but, we talk a lot in concepts, where a lot of this stuff is conceptual, and then you can walk away from it. But a governor can't do that. A governor has got to get it done. And I think our country needs a governor. That's my feeling. As I say, I like Chris Christie. I think a lot of the things he's done, he's obviously not afraid to be blunt. That gets him into trouble sometimes, but I sort of like that. I like the straight talk. As I say, I like Walker, and even Kasich down in Ohio. There's some Mike Pence from Indiana. I don't think he's going to do it this cycle, but we have a real strong farm field of strong governors.
Would you
Rick
encourage?
Snyder, maybe.
I was going to say, would you encourage Rick Snyder to run?
I think Rick Snyder will do whatever he thinks is best for the state of Michigan or the country, and he may be going through that decision making right now. I really don't know, but as I say, look, when you look at a governor like him that had the political will to do what had to be done in the city of Detroit, that is a national story. That's a national story, and it's a legacy issue. And again, balancing the budget on. We used to, I remember back in the old days when we would go through these budget fights, and then the budget wasn't going to be, done, and they were in the middle of the night, and blah blah blah, and that just became sort of the norm until Rick Snyder walked through the door. Guess what? The budget started getting balanced on time. Actually, before before the deadline. There was no more of this crises management.
Right. So if he called and asked you for advice, should I run or not? What would you tell him?
I tell him he ought to think about it.
Nice way out. Thanks for joining us. Always good to have you on the show.
All right. Thanks, Frank.
Take care. Congresswoman Candace Miller.